After each candidate's 5-minute speech, we will start the question and answer portion of the forum. We have 10 questions and each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond per question. Again, I will call on each of you in alphabetical order, and Kristen will alert you about the time, same as in the introductory speeches. Candidates, a few ground rules. Candidates cannot call out other candidates by name. Please also refrain from saying things such as one of the other candidates has proposed, this other candidate said this or that. This is not a time for back and forth or mudslinging. We want to keep this civil. It's simply an opportunity for you to state your views, not denounce the views of the other candidates. If a candidate violates the no mudslinging policy or the time limits and is consistently having issues, you'll be given a warning. If it continues to happen, the candidate will be removed from the forum. So I'm not worried that we're going to have any issues like that, but we wanted to set some ground rules up front. So with that being said, we're going to get started. So we will first start with Chris Figge, and he will be given 5 minutes for his introductory remarks.
Well, thank you, Victoria. This is the first time we've done this candidate forum like this. And I must confess, about probably less than a year ago, I wasn't even sure what Zoom was. So how the world has changed in 12 months. But I first want to just say hi to Dave Seagraves, Andy Lydens, Jim Fodor, and Philip Varley. Thank you for being here. I think this is going to be kind of the wave of the future, to be honest. Just about myself, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and we lived there until I was 8. My dad was transferred to Chicago, and we lived in Des Plaines, Illinois. I went to Maine West High School. And then from there, I went to the University of Iowa. I got my bachelor's in business administration. And then shortly after that, moved to where I had always wanted to live, and that was Colorado. So I moved here in 1979 for the express purpose of opening my business. And that is, to this day, what I do. I own and manage and operate SOS Technologies. And I have an incredible staff, one of whom actually who lives here in Carroll. And one of the beauties of owning your own business is you can take time away to do things such as travel, and I've done a fair amount of travel, but also I can coordinate my schedule around such things as serving on the Master Association or committees or that type of thing. So that has been a real luxury for me. I started with the Master Association Board of Directors in 2005 and served till 2010. And then again in 2011 was elected and served until 1 year ago. And I chose to step aside a year ago in March. And considering everything that's happened since then, maybe it was a good year to not be on the board. But I'm looking to get back on the board. I have served on a lot of different committees, and those include the Veterans Monument Committee. And I must tell you, that was, for whatever reason, a tough road to hoe. We spent about 4 years trying to select and get a good site. And what we have today across the street from Schaefer Elementary is just a beautiful monument. We raised about $135,000, and my hat is off to the men and women who I worked with on that. That was one of the more amazing and special things I think I've done. I've also been on the, either served on the committee or been a liaison to the Covenant Control Committee, the Architectural Control Committee, the Parks Advisory Committee, which for several reasons I would suggest we reinvigorate, whether it's a committee or a task force, whatever. And then the Community Planning Committee, which in fact we met just last night. Kristen, I have to tip my hat to you. It was an amazing meeting. You did a great job running it. And I'll tell you, I feel like we got a lot of traction last night. I know the Master Association has put out bids, RFPs for our survey, the company that will help us develop that survey. And in fact, on March 16th, the Master Association will award the contract to one of those 10, or if 10 bid, who knows how many will bid, but whoever has bid, we will select one of those people. And we're going to be developing this survey. I think some of the questions, in fact, on tonight's candidate forum questionnaire, in fact, will be, we'll get some results from the survey. I think a properly developed survey can serve both the Master Association and the Metropolitan District very well in working together and making sure that the community's wants and needs are first of all heard, and then also that our budgeting priorities are addressed accordingly. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chris. All right, Jim Fodor, you now have 5 minutes.
Okay, hi, I'm Jim Fodor. I'm a retired dentist. I've done all sorts of things in my life. I'd like to start out, though, with my upbringing. When I was a child, I was brought up in a blue-collar neighborhood. Our family lived with my grandmother's house. And what was interesting was we had a recreation center close by. It was very important to development of kids. And we could always get in a baseball game. We'd have at least 1 or 2 baseball games a week and all sorts of activities in the city of Cleveland. And we moved to the suburbs and we had nothing. We kids had to do everything ourselves, organize things. We never got a baseball game. You couldn't get 9 players on the side together to play a baseball game. So we played basketball. So I realized how important that activities are, organized activities are for kids. And that's very important to me, even though I have no children. I went to high school, played sports, loved playing sports, and joined the Navy in the Supply Corps after graduating from The Ohio State University, Buckeyes, with a major in transportation management and economics. And I had some graduate level courses in economics while I was in undergraduate school. And then I entered the Supply Corps, which was the Navy's business organization. It handles all of the procurement and pay of the crew and all the services of the Navy. And I learned a lot from that. And then I was selected for petroleum inspection or quality assurance school. I had training in that, and then was stationed on Aruba in the Caribbean, where we traveled all over South America and the Caribbean, inspecting petroleum cargo as well as airports, wherever military or a United States agency plane would land. What was interesting about that is to see all parts of another part of the world I'd never seen before. And then when I moved here to Kcrma for the first time, I couldn't believe how incredibly beautiful this place is and how valuable our open space is. Because when I moved here, it was in the 1980s, the early 1980s. And the changes have been considerable in the last decade, which has come shock to me as what's happening in our open space. I think it's just awful. So anyway, we go on from there. In the Navy, I decided I'm going to go on to school. I was going to go to law school or finish my master's in business. And then I got a Christmas card from a friend of mine who was my roommate. He was a dentist. And I thought, yeah, okay, I think that would be a good thing to be. I could be my own, open my own business someday and be a dentist. So I went into the Navy, into the U.S. Public Health Service, which is a uniform service, and had a lot of experience. I was in charge of a clinic and then in the entire health service department. And then later on, I was in charge of a region. Now they just of the region of the United States. And we are in charge of all the dental clinics within our region as far as how they operated and budgeting and that sort of thing. As far as the future of Carroll Ranch, we moved into Carroll Ranch before I retired. And then I was sent to my last duty station in New Jersey and then came back to Carroll Ranch. We decided to settle here, although I was licensed in the Northeast region and also the Central region of the United States. While I was in this community, I served on my neighborhood board and have attended a lot of the district and master association meetings. And I see that there is a problem here that we need to fix. When we budget here, I think we need to establish priorities first. The budgeting is done piecemeal, expenses and revenue, and I would like to see both boards develop a philosophy of how we want our money to be spent. I didn't practice for this interview, but it was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Next, we have Andy Leidens.
So can you enable the screen sharing? If you can't, or if it's not easy, I'll just.
Yeah, Kristen's doing it right now.
Okay, got it. Thank you. You see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. We see a PowerPoint presentation.
All right, so I will, I made a couple edits while I was listening to Dr. Fodor. I'm a big, I grew up in Michigan and I'm a big Michigan fan. I'm a Wolverine, and so I had to put that in there. I had some things, some comments about Ohio State, but I thought I'd keep it positive and might get a warning if I put what I had thought right after Ohio there. But I did go to college in Ohio, so I've got a lot of friends from Cleveland and Dayton and Cincinnati that are all Buckeyes. So fortunately, when I was in college, Michigan held their own against the Buckeyes. So we won't talk about the last 10 years or so. I like to think of Michigan as a basketball school now. But anyway, I was born in Michigan, went to college in Ohio, lived in New Mexico, then Iowa, where I met my wife. And we got married in Sioux City, Iowa. So lived in Iowa for a couple of years. So the Hawkeyes are actually my second team in the Big Ten. So still got some Iowa sweatshirts and have a bunch of relatives in Iowa. So that's my second Big Ten team. Anyway, I lived in 3 different houses in Carroll in 2 different neighborhoods. So I lived in Carroll Ranch and the North Ranch in 3 different homes. So obviously we love it here. 3 adult children that are all raised and gone, and one in law school in Tennessee, and the other 2 are out in Salt Lake. And I love living in Carroll, and that's why I've been here 27 years, and got a little extra time on my hands now that the girls are gone. And so I'm just looking to give some time back to the community. And I wasn't sure when I first ran what to think, but I've enjoyed it. I've gotten to know the other board members, and we've got good chemistry. And so I'd like to serve again. Some of the things that I'm thinking about for the future, what's on my mind as far as the community. I think the new housing development coming is probably one of the biggest issues that needs to be addressed and focused on over the next couple of years. Just a lot of variables there, a lot of stress on our amenities, a lot of things to consider that we need to be really conscientious of. And developers are real pros at doing what they do. So it's going to be a real challenge for us to make sure we don't get run over and taken advantage of. I think continuing to cooperate with the MD and other districts overall, but especially on this housing development, will be big. But overall, just fiscally, continuing to build a strong reserve. And I love how our community engages for the most part. We have a lot of repeat engagers, which I think is great. But the communities and so forth are I think, really a great way to make sure that we're in concert with what the residents want. Security and safety, I think, is a big deal too. That's become more and more important. For not just because of COVID, but just because of security and vandalism and the safety of our staff and protecting our community. Also, one of my themes is just listening to all residents. I think we have a lot of participation at board meetings, and we hear a lot from the folks that do attend. I wish we had a broader feedback from the community, and I think that's why funding the 2020-21 survey and making sure we have good participation in that's going to be super important. Making sure we get the right firm to make sure that we have the right questions so we can really use that going forward. I'm really happy that it's a community-led effort. I don't think it should be board-led. I think it should be community-led and then guided with some professionals like the firm that we're going to hire. That'll guide the initiatives and the projects and so forth going forward that I think will be really key. It'll help balance what we do and why we do it. I think having transparency to what we do, I think we do a really good job there. Everything we have is public. Anybody can have review any of the documents and see any of the budget and so forth that we have. Am I done?
Yes, thank you so much, Andy.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Next up is Dave Seagraves.
Hello, and thank you for inviting me. My name's Dave Seagraves. I've lived in Kcrma Ranch, the same house at 88 Buckthorn Drive for 34 and a half years. I'm still employed, and I'm actually speaking to you tonight from the city market in Pagosa Springs. So if the light goes out, I have no idea how to turn the light back on except to move back and wave my arms. Anyway, I was born and raised in the suburbs of Philadelphia. Went to Drexel University, got a civil engineering degree, and I worked for Amarada Hess after I graduated from college. And at 26 years old, I think I was the youngest terminal manager. I ran a bulk plant in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And we delivered gasoline to all the gas stations south in southern Florida from the middle of the state south. In a few years after that, I switched jobs and worked for a company called Tenneco. I was building gas stations all over the state of Florida. They had work in Colorado in 1984 and 85. And I asked if I could come out here because I had my best friend lived out here that I grew up with in Philadelphia. When I came out here, I did some work in Colorado. I did some work for Tenneco. There used to be gas stations out here and convenience stores called Tenneco. So while I was out here, I met my future wife in 1985, found a job with Total Petroleum, started in January of 1986, got married in April of 1986, and a few months after that, moved into our house, a brand new house at 88 Buckthorn Drive. So we've lived in the same house for 34 and a half years, and it's just an amazing place. I absolutely love the area. I love King Carroll. I love our neighbors. I want to tell you, my dad and mom are buried at Arlington National Cemetery. My dad was, he was in World War II and Korea, and he was in the Army Reserve for at least 20 years after the war. And that's why he's buried at Arlington. He was a longtime scout leader, and he's my hero, still is, I guess. So I get my spirit of service from my dad. And my whole adult life has been, I've been involved in Boy Scouts and other activities. when we moved in 1986, I can't remember when Bradford Primary was built or Bradford South. Here we go. But it opened with 8 or 9 temporary classrooms. Opened that way. Jefferson County was talking about going to year-round education. So I decided to join the Bradford PTA before my oldest son was even old enough to go to school, because I knew it was important to make a difference in the education of my children as well as the children of Kcrma Ranch. So we pressed the school district, and they ended up building Bradford Intermediate, which is, I guess, now called Bradford North. And it alleviated a lot of the problems with overcrowding of Bradford Primary. But during the construction, again, I've been in construction for most of my adult life, construction management and development. And anyway, while we were looking at the drawings, and Jefferson County decided to, the school district decided to move the pedestrian crossing signal between 2 roads along Valley Parkway. And I noticed there wasn't a sidewalk planned for the east side of Valley Parkway on the other side of the school. So I lobbied to get a sidewalk built, and they told me it wouldn't fit. So I designed the sidewalk for them, and they built it, and the sidewalk still exists. And then they came out with the transportation plan for, are you serious? All right. So they came out with a transportation plan for both. Did Victoria put you up to that? Anyway, so they came out with a transportation plan, and it was horrible. And I helped them craft the transportation plan for, it's probably still running in some fashion similar to what I designed. But I won't even get into the Boy Scouts. I've been in Boy Scouts for over 20 years, and there's hundreds of families that have benefited from my leadership and others that are like-minded to me. And I'll get into the other things in the other questions. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Dave. All right, now we'll move on to Philip Varley.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your interest in what might be the most important Master Association election in a decade. As a board member, I'm seeking to accomplish the following. First and foremost, I want to assure budget and fiscal integrity. And as a CPA and Chief Financial Officer, I'm ideally qualified for that role. I also want to preserve and protect and enhance what everyone agrees here among the board candidates is our priceless signature landscape and our unique animals, birds, plants, and trees from further fragmentation and visual degradation. I want to promote a safe, enjoyable, and world-class experience for all users of all the amenities, including trails, pools, tennis courts, and buildings. And maybe even we should add some pickleball courts. And a priority must be to ensure adequate maintenance of the existing facilities, particularly the fences in the plains, so that the visitor's first impression of Kcrma is one of delight, as it is for all of us when we come home. The result of all of the above, I think, will be to enhance our home values and our quality of everyday life. So a bit of background on me. I moved to Kcrma in 1993 after the house I lived in Lakewood had, had buildings done on the open space behind it. So key to me was the open space. My daughter was 6 months old, and we specifically chose where we are because of the open space, Bradford School, and the pride that was evidenced by well-kept appearance of the community. And perhaps because it was a new development, most of my neighbors were also young parents, and perhaps because we all met at school functions and babysat for each other, there was a genuine feeling of community, which I think is sadly lacking today. The best evidence we had of everyone sharing a common interest here was to be found in Pride Days, which were held on a Saturday in April, where everyone worked on a beautification project in their own neighborhood. We'd all bought into Kcrma understanding the rules that governed our homes and the declarations that mandated for no development in the open space and required the board to strike a balance between conservation and recreation. The original development master plan had created 20 miles of trails for active recreation and set aside the hills south of Massey Draw for preservation. Clearly, in the last 10 years, that balance has been lost. So what I see today is that the community is divided, reflecting a similar polarization, but for different reasons than what we see nationally. Board members here are elected to represent the entire community and have a duty of loyalty to work in the best interest of all residents, not just a small group. I want to find solutions which brings the community together rather than create more divisions. One particular question in the resident survey of 2017 left much to be desired in its wording. And that question was, should the Master Association provide or increase the number of trails? Well, clearly that is two questions in one. And from other questions asking about trail usage, 95% of the people probably answered yes to this because they want the MA to provide trails. But from the written answers provided in the over 200 pages of written comments, 80% of those respondents said they wanted to see maintenance of existing facilities take priority over new trails construction, and that has not happened, and I'm very upset about that. So this desire has been woefully disregarded in the last 4 years, so I want to overcome the backlog of deferred maintenance which has accumulated, as funding has been disproportionately allocated to new trails. Divisions in the community can also be repaired by the conduct of board meetings. I will treat all commentators with dignity and respect, and I will answer questions asked directly out of me, with the caveat that such answers will represent only my personal opinion and not necessarily that of the board. In addition, I will always personally answer letters and emails from residents, and as a frequent communicator with the board, I know that that doesn't always happen. I've always been curious as to why a board member would not explain their rationale for a decision. And as I'm a chemical engineer by degree, and as a result of that training, always seek a wide variety of data to solve a problem, considering all of its consequences. I'm more than happy to explain my rationale so that those who might not agree with me understand the metrics I'm using to offer a solution. So I'm asking for your vote to accomplish the following: preserve the remaining open space and uphold the requirements of the covenants to provide a balance between recreation and conservation, ban all racing on the trails, leave all existing dirt trails as dirt trails and prevent widening and paving them, put a comprehensive fence management plan in place, provide transparency for all of my decisions, answer all the questions asked of me, and make Carroll the most sought after suburban location in Metro Denver. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, guys. We're going to move into the question and answer section. I went over this earlier, but just to reiterate for those people who have joined us since then, there will be, we have 10 questions that will be asked of each candidate. I will go in the same alphabetical order for the candidates as I did before. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to respond. We are putting time restrictions on this, otherwise this meeting could go on until midnight. And we will also be doing the same notification. Kristen will be holding up the signs to let you know when your time is up as well. And then just to reiterate some of the ground rules, candidates cannot call out other candidates by name. Please also refrain from saying things such as one of the other candidates proposed, or this candidate said this or that. It's simply an opportunity for you to answer the question, state your views, not denounce the views of the other candidates. So with that said, we will get started with the questions. I'll start with the first question, and then I'll have Chris Figge answer. What background and experience do you have in dealing with the recent happenings on the development of vacant property in and around King Soopers? What do you foresee as your plan to deal with it? Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. Well, first of all, this is no surprise. This has been zoned residential for quite some time. It has changed hands, and now there's a proposal for development. And that's kind of where it's at the moment. I know the Architectural Committee is involved in reviewing these plans. And I also recognize that when Bell Apartments went in, which used to be Embry, that we were concerned about that. There's 250 apartments multiplied by whatever, 2.5. I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds of residents that moved in. And quite honestly, I don't think we had an adverse impact of any sort. These are dues paying residents, as the new development will be. And I think we'll be fine adding new housing stock to our community.
Great. Jim Fodor, same question.
Yeah, I just have to address something that Andy said. And that was most of the players that came from the state of, I mean, most of the players on Michigan's team came from the state of Ohio when he was watching them beat us routinely. But anyway, I saw the light on this situation years ago and went to the Master Association and said, you know, land is very valuable. There's 27 acres here owned by a Saudi Arabian group. Maybe we can get this rezoned and let's buy it with assessments. And that wasn't, the Master Association didn't even bring that up to the community, but that was like 20 years ago. And then I attended these meetings. They were Jefferson County Planning Jefferson County planning meetings that were held every Monday. And I attended those for about 8 months. And one of the things they pointed out was if you have a vacant lot in an intersection, it adds value, because if you put a structure on it, then it detracts from the value and makes it look unaesthetic.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you,
so much.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I'm done?
When,
Oh, no, I'm
and-
so
all
sorry.
right,
We appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
all right. Remember, just 1 minute per answer, per candidate.
I don't
Andy.
want to waste too much time,
Leibniz?
but I do want to just mention that Michigan has an all-time winning record over Ohio State, despite the recent woes. That was worth 10 seconds. So regarding the development, I think that we all know it's coming. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's one of the key things that is facing the board and the community to address. I just think we need to stay out in front of it. We need to make sure we communicate really well with all the other districts that are involved, keep Jefferson County in the fold, make sure we're talking to the developers and we have a really clear idea as to what they plan to do, because we all know what their MO is. It's to make money and to squeeze as much out of the amenities as they can to increase their margins. So that's not a secret, and it's going to be a big challenge. We need to really make it a priority.
Great. Thank you, Andy. Dave Seagraves.
Yikes. Hi, I've been involved with development, real estate development for 34 years. I think I'm uniquely qualified to understand where the developer and the home builders are in their progress. And I don't know if anybody else knows that's running, maybe Andy does because he's on the board, but our architectural committee has already been involved with oversight of with the builders on home designs, and they've already pushed back to one of the home builders to upgrade their lower end product to upgrade to the standards that we expect in Kcrma Ranch. So I expect to be involved if I'm reelected. I know Chris Schroeder's already involved in a big way with the architectural committee, and we're on top of it. Victoria's been on top of it from the very beginning. She's been very communicative to the board and the community. So I applaud Victoria for her efforts. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dave. Philip Varley.
Well, it's unfortunate but inevitable that this land is being developed, but the governing body for what's allowable is Jefferson County. However, the MA, within whose boundaries this project lies, will be able to and must enforce the declarations on the developers, which mandate a certain amount of open space to be available to all residents of the association. Once built, then the MA is going to be responsible for ensuring covenant compliance on the homeowners to ensure the character of the ranch is maintained. So it's critical that we follow those rules. But with 1,000 or more new residents, it's even more imperative that non-residents' use of our trails is evaluated, that the undeveloped open space is protected, and that maybe hours of operations of recreation facilities are increased. There's already interest in creating pickleball courts, and this should be pursued. So this will be one area of inquiry I will be suggesting in the 2021 resident survey.
Great. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to question 2. The Open Space Committee approved a special event permit for the Asphalt Youth Mountain Bike Racing Team, composed of residents and non-residents, to train on our backcountry trails 2 days a week from March through October this year. Some residents are concerned about this type of use of our trails due to trail maintenance concerns, wildlife concerns, safety, and environmental factors. Do you support this kind of permit and use of our trails, and with what conditions? And do you think group use approvals should be made by the board instead of staff or the Open Space Committee? All right, we'll start with Chris Figge. Oh, Chris, you're muted.
Thank you.
There you go.
Okay. I find this to be a curious question. And the reason I say that is we don't seem to be following process or procedure if we're trying to answer this in this candidate forum. We don't necessarily have rules that prohibit this type of thing. And residents are permitted to bring guests into the open space. If there's a problem, we have process in place to address resident misconduct, as an example, a dog off leash, as an example. But we don't have a speed limit on our trail. We don't have a lot of things that we would need to even address this issue. I remember years ago, there was a group called Roundup Riders of the Rockies. Kim Harburg led a group of equestrians on our trails, and there was a lot of commotion about it. But I don't think this is quite the right forum to be answering this question.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Jim Fodor?
I think this is the right forum to answer this question because we're talking to the people. My problem with Avowed isn't Avowed, which is a great organization, and we have champions, amazing, in this neighborhood that are members of Avowed. This is the wrong place for them. We're a small community. We're 1/10 the size of Lakewood. I think they should be going somewhere else. We're pouring our money into these trails that are specific for this kind of activity. Otherwise, they wouldn't be coming here. So I think we should have rules and regulations against aggressive mountain biking, and that our trail system is totally wrong from the get-go. It should have been constructed so you could reach points of interest and observe areas that are undisturbed instead of going through the heart of a community, of ecological community like Dockman. So I think that no, we should not invite any aggressive groups into Carroll Ranch.
All right, thank you, Jim. Andy Leidens?
Yeah, I support this primarily because I consider it a youth program. The elementary school and middle school kids that are out enjoying the open space and not playing on video games, and a lot of them can't do the traditional sports that they would do in school because they're canceled. I just don't see anything negative about it from that perspective. The Open Space Committee, I think, should be the one to do it, not the board. And I think they reviewed it. They had a lot of dialogue about it. They enhanced the rules and regulations and so forth. And I support it. It's a 5-to-1 ratio. They can only use it twice a week. And the reality is they could come out here and do it without a permit at a 5-to-1 ratio. So it's nice that they're working with us, cooperating with us, and I support it.
All right, thank you, Andy. Dave Seagraves?
As a longtime scout leader, I've been, and athletic coach, I've been in support of youth programs my whole adult life. I don't understand the whole premise, because if we denied the permit, these kids could go out every day if they wanted in groups of 5 without a permit, and we would have no way of monitoring or managing their program. These kids average 12 years old. It's not like these are high school kids driving fast and running over hikers. Their average is 12 years old. So we need to keep that in mind when we when we discuss this permit going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Philip Barley?
So a Velt racing team is made up of a majority of members who don't live in Carroll. And the permission for groups of up to 40 bikers to race trade-on trials, which were originally constructed for hikers and equestrians. I don't see any justification for residents to subsidize such non-resident training activities. So while hikers can and frequently do jump out of the way of speeding bikers, horses get spooked. And as a result, it's rare today for us to see horses on our trail. That was common when I came here 30 years ago. I don't think we should be allowing a few staff or specialist committee members to approve outside group use of our private facilities, paid for by our homeowners' dues, which impact member enjoyment and lead to additional costs for members. The board should be one making this decision so that requests become public knowledge, and as such would then provide an opportunity for resident input at board meetings. So my expanded answer to this question is there should be no group bike racing training on our trails at all, as the maintenance costs of the damage caused by the high speeds, braking action, use in wet weather, etc., should not be borne by residents.
All right, thank you, Philip. All right, we're going to move on to the third question. What are your views on protecting the environment and animal habitat within Carroll, and would you support rehabilitation of the open space to create green spaces dedicated to protecting the animals and their habitat? We'll start with Chris Figge.
Okay, well, everyone is an environmentalist at heart. I know that. All of us are. My answer might not seem one that you would expect, but I've been an advocate for the Dark Sky Society lighting standards, and that does impact wildlife. And I would continue with the Dark Sky Society membership that Carroll Ranch already has, and encourage residents to recognize the value of hooded lighting in their yards. The development of a green space, I mean, we have 4,600 acres of open space, so I don't know quite what the redevelopment reference is here, or the rehabilitation reference. So.
All right, thank you, Chris. Jim Fodor?
Yes. What they're talking about here is going on throughout the United States, Jefferson County, communities close to us. They're setting aside areas as a conservation area, similar to the Wilderness Act of 1964, where you do not allow any mechanical means of transportation into those areas. So you can get to a point where you can observe what's going on and let the area flourish, instead of taking a terrible trail like the Dockman Loop Trail, which dissects the very sensitive Dockman area. What I'm hoping is that we can establish an area like that in Carroll Ranch, south of Massey Draw, as recommended by 2 biological surveys that we paid for, keep the mechanical means of transportation out of there, because what we're getting are aggressive mountain bikers in the area. And I think this would be an asset we can all be proud of in Carroll Ranch, business and residents. You live in Carroll Ranch? Wow, you've got a conservation area. That's going to raise the status of the community.
Thank you, Jim. Andy Lydens?
Yep. Yeah, I support this, and I think we do it now. I know I participate in activities that support this. I help the rangers out. The Trail Club does. We pay for weed mitigation. We do erosion projects. We're constantly talking about drainage and so forth at MA meetings, and that's all to protect the open space, which helps the habitat and helps rehabilitate those areas. So I certainly support it. We have a lot of open space. We've thwarted commercial development in the past, and I'm sure we would do that again. So yeah, I'm really proud of what we've done in the community, and I hope we continue to do so.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Dave Seagraves?
I agree with several of the candidates. I think we have a flourishing animal population with social media, every day we're seeing pictures of bobcats and mountain lions and bear. And I don't think we have an animal population issue at all. 8 years ago, a mountain lion was under the deck of my house, and he jumped out from under the deck and stalked and ate a deer right on our front lawn. So that's a pretty cool thing. Anyway, I think we do a great job with managing our open space and allowing our animals to live in their neighborhood that we're borrowing.
All right, thank you, Dave. Philip Varley.
Well, my views on protecting the open space are well known to everyone who's read the paper since 2009. Massey Draw, to my mind, is a glaring example of how what was once a single track trail has become a 20-foot wide ugly scar. Manor House Trail is another one. The company Single Track, which is a sole source contractor for maintenance and which built Cougar Trail, among others, caused a scar on the hillside by simply throwing the construction detritus off the side of the new trail rather than carrying it to the gullies for dispersal, simply because it was cheaper to do that. And 5 years ago, a company called Weed Wranglers destroyed about 50 acres of open space by using an incorrect formula for the weed killer, yet they are still on our vendor list. So I would work to rehabilitate all of the trails where excessive use has exposed their footprint to more than what was originally built. I'd plant shrub oak or other native vegetation along the lower side of the trails to hide them from view. And I would revegetate the areas of bare red earth along Carroll Avenue and in the Manor House area caused by that weed killer.
Okay, thank you, Philip. We'll move on to question 4. What are your opinions on the fencing opportunities in the neighborhood, including private fences that border our public streets? Start with Chris Figge.
Okay, well, I've been carrying this torch for probably 10 years now. I think any planned community has a plan for the perimeter fences, and we don't. And I think that is a travesty because I think it adversely impacts our property values. If everybody that's on this call is at some point going to sell their home, and there's a chance that people come in from who knows where, Ohio, Michigan, California, and they're going to look around the Southwest metropolitan area. And one of the things is we are starting to really look tattered. Now, we passed the bond referendum to improve the appearance of our campuses, but our fences remain in a state of disrepair, and they just get worse and worse. And even if the individual homeowners take responsibility, you're going to get a patchwork approach to these fences, different dye lots and colors and so forth. So we absolutely have to do something.
All right, thank you, Chris. Jim Fodor.
Yeah, the previous comment is actually absolutely correct. This has been going on for over a decade, should not have. The reason is we're pouring so much money into the open space, developing something that's not good for the open space, and that is overdevelopment and the wrong kind of development, which is encouraging the type of behavior that's going on in the open space. We've had 4 serious accidents in the last 3 years. Here's what we ought to be doing. We should look at our budget, maybe even use something like the TABOR, Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. Everything you spend in the open space on development, let's spend a certain percentage of that money developing and maintaining our property where we live. This is what increases property values, not building a trail at South Dockman, which is miles away. That's not going to increase your property value. And they're going to spend money on that. They just spend money on the bio survey, which is absolutely unnecessary. Let's spend the money here now and allocate a certain percentage.
All right.
Oh, can
thank
I
you,
get a
Jim.
30? I need
All
a 30
right,
seconds.
now Andy Leidens.
Yeah, I think the fences is a big deal. I think we need to have a comprehensive study. I know we've had something like that in the past. We need to revisit it. It's complicated. It's way more complicated than just allocating money to replace them all. There's a lot of different types of fences. There's challenges between who owns the fences, what property they're on. But the net is that it needs to be addressed. They are starting to look tattered. And we need to figure something out, whether we reduce the amount of fencing, make them consistent, work with the homeowners to to help pay for it, which we've done in the past for certain sections, but we've got to figure something out, and it's really important.
Okay, thank you, Andy. Dave Seagraves.
I agree with everyone so far. I want to bring up fence. There was a fencing issue along Valley Parkway, not too far from where I live, where there was a rock wall that supported the fence, and the rock wall was deteriorating and needed to be fixed. And Chris Passetti at the time had a collaborative approach with Kcrma Ranch Master Association homeowners, and I got involved, and I was able to get a scout working on his Eagle project to do the demolition of that fence as part of his Eagle project, saving the community and the homeowners thousands of dollars. I'd like to see a similar approach with the perimeter fences in the Plains area.
All right, thank you, Dave. Philip Varley.
So the fences along our arterials are bleached, they're falling over, in many cases they're rotting. This has been an issue forever, and it not only creates an eyesore, but it gives people the impression that as a community we don't care, and that is critical. The fences are owned by a combination of the MA, the MD, and privately, and staff have begun to identify the ownership of all the fences, hence the complexity. I'd like to see a 5-year plan to fix them. It's easy to talk about it, but let's get started. The MA can begin the rehabilitation process by taking care of the fences that we own by applying cedar stain. That would at the very least prevent further deterioration and provide a uniform color along what are the entrances to the community and present a good first impression to all visitors. And as FYI, I have been bringing this subject up for at least 10 years, and it's been purely simply a comment at a meeting and never acted on. So we can identify which fences need to be repaired. We can pay for those which we own, and we can mandate through the covenant compliance that those that are owned by individuals are repaired to the same standards. We have the funds. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Philip. All right, we're doing well, guys. We're moving on to question number 5. The Metro District faces financial uncertainties due to their tax-based funding. Based on this, what do you see as the role of the Master Association in maintaining shared amenities and potentially sharing expenses and collaborating with the Metro District? Chris Figge?
So there are 2 places that we have already done that just in the recent past. One has to do with the water bill. The Master Association used to pay nothing for water. I think it was 5-6 years ago. Today we pay 80% of the water bill. The pool. The Master Association stepped in big time, to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars per year to assist in getting the pool completed. I think we have a template in place to, we also had the Financial Stability Work Group, and I was a part of that for its first year of existence, and we got the Metro District and the Master Association to sit down and talk, and what's good for the Master Association and good for the Metro District is good for the community. We have to work together. And if they have financial struggles, we have to assist. We have to think our way through whatever the issue is. And there's always going to be issues, whatever they are. And it may be the Master Association needs help from the Metro District sometime in the future.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Jim Fodor.
Yeah, the Metro District is not going to have the problems they had in the past. And the reason is not only that our property values have gone up, but Gallagher's out of the way now. And as a result of that, your residential assessment rate won't be going down every year as they predicted. So they're going to be in better shape. And the previous speaker is right. The Master Association has helped the district recently, last 3 years or so. They should have done it long before that. There wasn't cooperation. And I also want to give a shout out to the district because I attend these budget meetings. And I have found through the years that they really watch everything they had to because they were under financial straits. I think the Master Association and the allocation of their funds, we really have to take a good hard look at that and establish priorities. And again, the priority should be preserving nature and preserving where we live.
All right, thank you, Jim.
And-
As a reminder, we'll hold up the card. You can just finish that sentence and then we move on.
Yeah, well,
All
I
right,
need the 30
so
seconds.
Andy
So what-
Lydens,
I'd like to finish it. Okay, can I finish that?
you finished your sentence, so we're gonna move on. Andy Lydens.
All right.
Sure. Well, the good news is that the MD reported $800,000 more at the end of 2020 than they did in 2019. So that's encouraging. And they were about 1.3 million under their budget. Some of that was due to canceling programs from COVID, but that helps. And I do think that obviously we need to work together. It's for the betterment of the community. That's kind of been a theme since I've been on the board. It is the general theme. If you go back and look at how we've cooperated together and prioritize what's really important for the community. And then if the MD's on hard times and it's something the community needs, then, you know, the MA needs to help fund that. It all comes out of the residents' pocket one way or the other. So it's important for that communication to continue.
All right, thank you, Andy. Dave Seagraves.
For years, the MD and the MA had their money, and that's how they treated it as their money. And the MD would say they're in trouble, and they'd grovel to the MA, and the MA would give them some money to help. We've taken firm steps to define how much we're going to pay in irrigation of MA property, and it's really helped the MD in many ways. They're on a lot firmer financial footing than they used to be. I'd have to say that Scotty Martin and John Huggins, the presidents of the respective boards, they set the standards on how we're supposed to treat each other and as one community. And I give them a lot of credit for putting us in the right direction. And also to Victoria and Tracy, the executive directors of the MA and the MD, for following through and working together to make sure we're one community. So thank you to both of them.
All right, thank you, Dave. And Philip Farley.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. Fortunately, with the repeal of the Gallagher Amendment in the last November election, that provided for much more certainty in the tax funding, and due to the prevalence of residential over business property in our community, made the funding outlook much brighter than it was previously. For those who don't know, the MD is already actively trying to incorporate the new developments within our boundaries, and the MA and the MD have always worked together, and in the last couple of years have become much more of a partnership. There's already much cost sharing between the two, and irrigation is a prime example. So I'd like to see that continue.
All right, thank you, Philip. All right, we will move on to question number 6. How much do you value nature, and do you donate to any environmental or conservation groups? Chris Figge.
Well, I think the last 12 months have given everybody in this community an opportunity to be in our open space and use these beautiful trails that we've put in to your benefit. If anything, it's been the year to be outdoors safely, and the nature around us that we have maybe not been so aware of because of our busy work schedules and our constant leaving home and so forth. Many of us have had this incredible opportunity to commune with nature in our own backyard. And again, I'll go back to the Dark Sky Society. That's the group that I give to and participate in as kind of an amateur astronomer, if you will. I enjoy that.
All right, thank you, Chris. Jim Fodor.
Yes, as soon as I got in the Navy and was making a little bit of money, I started donating to the Nature Conservancy, the World Wildlife Fund, the Sierra Club, the National Audubon Society, Greenpeace, which I believe is an outstanding organization. And just recently I received a certificate from the Sourland Conservancy, certificate of appreciation. That's in New Jersey. As far as nature, I think from the beginning of this discussion, you see how I feel about it. And I think we are really doing a disservice to nature with the trail system we have. I think it should be reevaluated by somebody like the Colorado National Heritage Program, which is out of Colorado State University, matching our trail system to the environment that they're familiar with because they've been out here before, and also the small population that is supporting this. We only have 4,400 residents.
All right, Dr. Fodor, thank you.
I don't see a 30-second thing.
We're not holding up the 30-second. We're holding up the end. We're holding it up at the end of the minute, and you have the opportunity to finish that sentence only.
All right.
Andy Lydens.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, of course, I value nature, and that's why I live here in Kcrma. But it's something I think about every day, and every weekend I try to get out and enjoy it, whether it's here or somewhere else in the United States or world. So, and I don't, my conservative group that I donate of choice is called Clean Water Action, and they're big in protecting the cleanliness and of Lake Michigan and the Great Lakes. So I also contribute to Rails to Trails, which takes vacant railroads that are decaying and littering the Midwest and turning them into bike paths.
Great, thank you, Andy. Dave Seagraves.
Well, I've given thousands of hours and plenty of my money to Boy Scouts of America, which is one of the most impactful programs on teaching nature and living in nature. I'm speaking from Pagosa Springs, and I can tell you every time I make this drive, I know God's speaking to me. So the mountain ranges are just spectacular. I also give to our church because my wife's a better Christian than me, and I give to the American Cancer Society because my dad and mother-in-law both died of cancer, and we give to the Alzheimer's Association because my father-in-law died of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. So that's my answer to that question. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dave. Philip Varley.
So I live in Carroll because I value nature. I've got deer sleeping on my lawn. I rescued a raccoon in May who was the runt of the litter and had limped into a cardboard box I had by my trash. I photographed red-tailed hawks and great horned owls from my deck, and as Sean Warren knows, because I always ask him for help in identifying unusual migratory species, I'm avid in photographing those birds. I've got multiple bird feeders, and as readers of the paper know, because I mentioned that as a great diversion during our lockdowns, as a little bit of light relief, someone sent me a piece of hate mail telling me how dare I lecture people on how to spend their time when they were locked down. But anyway, I belong to the Botanic Gardens and the Audubon Society locally, and globally, I donate to the Rainforest Alliance and the Ocean Conservancy, because without the tropical rainforests, we'll lose the Earth's lungs, and unless we clean up the ocean, we'll lose a major source of food.
Great, thank you, Philip. All right, we're moving on to question 7. And just to reiterate, Kristen will hold up a sign when the end of your minute is up. You get 1 minute, and then you're allowed to just finish that sentence. And then we move on to the next person. Question 7. Are you satisfied with the current number of concrete trails in the Ranch, Valley, and Plains? And do you think there should be a hiatus on building any single track backcountry dirt trails pending full community survey and expert input? Chris Figge.
Okay, the answer to the second part of the question is yes. I do think that we ought to get specific answers to the needs and wants and desires of our residents, of the owners of this beautiful place we call home. And so the survey, which will be in the hands of professionals in 30 days, and we should have the results for this budget cycle, I would be in favor of getting input specific to that specific question in regard to building the completing or continuing with the Trail Master Plan. In regard to the concrete surfaces, we do have a conversion from asphalt to concrete plan in effect. In fact, we're probably fairly close to the end of that. And so whatever is asphalt, we're going to convert to concrete because the asphalt has lived its useful life, like much else in Carroll that has a life cycle.
All right, thank you, Chris. Jim Fodor?
Yes, I agree with that. We should stop all dirt trail construction now. And the reason is, as Chris said, we're depending on this survey, but hopefully the questions this time will be direct questions. So there won't be any discussion or conflict between people on one side of the issue and the other using the same statistics to justify how they feel. The trail plan is almost completed. It's time to stop building the trails, especially the Dockman South Trail. This is going to open up a can of worms that is more than environmental, like the Dockman Trail. It's going to possibly, because it links up with the property of Jefferson County, a lot of people coming onto our property that are unauthorized. That's it. I did it.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Andy Lydens?
Yeah, I think there's probably enough concrete trails, although there have been a lot of people using them. And every time I'm out on a concrete trail, I come across 6 or 7 people, even when I go for a walk over lunch. So I guess it depends what the residents want. As far as new trails, there aren't any new trails on the plan till post survey. So I think that'll be another good touch point. I will say that the number of people enjoying the open space and enjoying nature and enjoying the trails is unprecedented over the last year. So it's obvious that the residents really like and appreciate being able to responsibly and respectfully enjoy the open space.
All right, thank you, Andy. Dave Seagraves?
I think it's a settled issue. We discussed at the last MA board meeting that we would have the environmental survey and we'd have the community survey results back prior to budgeting for 2022. So I think everyone is pretty much in agreement that that's all going to occur before we budget for any new trails. One thing I do want to say that in the 3 years I've been on the board, we have voted on and budgeted 0 new additional backcountry trails. The Dockman Trail was approved of the board prior to me taking office. So we're not the prolific trail builders that we might be called. So anyway, as far as the concrete paths, we do have the program to replace asphalt with concrete, and that's what we're talking about. And that's all I think we should be doing. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Dave. Philip Farley?
So in the last 10 years, we've had more than 3 miles of what were pretty little narrow dirt trails in both the valley and the plains, concreted over, becoming wide roads and destroying the original rustic feel of Carroll. That conversion is an unnecessary expense and has created more problems than have been solved. Icing of trails which no longer drain is a prime example of that. These acres of concrete have detracted from the enjoyment of facilities such as Dakota Lodge, where half of the grassy area around the duck pond to the north of the lodge became a massive concrete walkway, duplicating an existing path to the south of the lodge. There should be no more conversion of dirt to concrete. And obviously, with the 25 miles of new backcountry trails having been built in the last 10 years, fragmenting that sensitive area, there should be a moratorium on new construction there as well. I'm particularly concerned by discussion on Facebook and other social media suggesting building a half-pipe bike adventure park in Lost Canyon for trails up the Hogback, and also open invitations on Strava for bikers to meet and come on the private trails. And here are some examples.
All right, thank you, Philip. All right, we will move on to question 8. If you could allocate more funding to one area of Kcrma responsibility, what area would it be and why? Chris Figge?
Well, Victoria, you probably know my answer. It has to do with fences. I really feel this needs to be addressed. And as an example, I spent some time with Chris Passetti over at the Highlands Ranch Metropolitan District discussing their program And what they basically do is they pretty much replace every single fence in Highlands Ranch every 30 years. So they start at one place and they move and move and move. And by the time they circle back around, 30 years has gone by and they have that program in place. For homeowners that maybe are having some financial problems, there's a program in Denver having to do with the fact that you're responsible for keeping the sidewalk in front of your house maintained. And they have a kind of a public-private partnership going. And I don't know if we really need that here, but working with the homeowner and maybe splitting costs. Let's face it, our irrigation system has caused a lot of the problems to the fences that are damaged in our area. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Chris. Jim Fodor?
Well, I feel that neighborhood beautification will increase our property values. And that has been deficient through the years. In other words, your greenbelt areas, your entrance ways, we should have been paying for neighborhood signs. That really irritated me when the Master Association said, we're not going to pay for signs anymore. And the reason is because we're directing our money in the wrong direction. What I would like to see happen is a philosophy developed first, which I don't see by either of these two boards. What will give you the greatest value? It's where we live. What's the thing that separates us from all other communities? It's our open space. Let's look at the amenities, and if any amenity detracts from of those areas, then it's the wrong amenity. And our open space doesn't give us any value at all.
All right, thank you, Jim. Andy Leidens?
Yeah, I'd say if I could pick one area, it would be staff training, staff development, staff retention, all around just focusing a little more finances and effort in those areas with our staff. I think it's super important for just the daily operation of our community. I think it's something we take for granted. I think it's the culture of our community is just so important, and we've got a lot of committed folks, and it's really expensive to retrain. It's we've all seen examples of when culture starts eroding and how detrimental that can be. So I'd say that's the biggest thing, and then I'd say next would be safety and security, more security cameras, and more safety protocols. That's it.
Thank you, Andy. Dave Seagraves.
Andy stole my thunder. That's no fair. Safety and security, that's my answer. Because of COVID, we've had issues with graffiti this past summer. Kids on the Red Rocks and over in the North Ranch, long after they were allowed to be. We need more cameras. We need more security in those areas. The Brandon Gerhardt Park, same thing. We've added some. We converted 2 part-time rangers, summer rangers, to full-time rangers, and I think this will help an awful lot going forward. So I would like to see more money spent on safety and security. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave. Philip Farley.
I'd like to spend money beautifying the medians, the verges, and the open space in general, planting new trees on all of the areas for which we have responsibility to replace those which are dying as they reach the end of their natural lives of 30 to 50 years, irrigating responsibly, and I emphasize responsibly, the grass verges and the entrances to the neighborhoods, which were well designed to showcase a wide variety of our colorful native trees and shrubs and soften the landscape. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Philip. All right, moving on to question 9. The Master Association and the Metro District Boards both set policy for different aspects of King Carroll Ranch. In recent years, the boards have focused on working together to jointly achieve major community priorities. How important do you feel collaboration is between the two boards? We'll start with Chris Figge.
Well, our community is only as strong as that collaboration. And I have to say that the boards, both of them, have demonstrated their desire to work together by choosing Victoria and Tracy. Those are that's where we start with both of you working together, and you work together, as best I can tell, phenomenally well. So, and I thank you and I applaud you for the fact that the staffs are so integrated. You know, when you call the ranch house and you got a problem and you're a resident, you don't know who to ask for. Master Association, Metro District, it shouldn't matter. When the phone is answered on the other end, there should be an answer or a person that they can get for that answer. And you know, you guys do a great job of that. The collaboration is, from what I can see, 100%. When we came to the problems with the pool, we got it addressed. When it came to recognizing that the Metro District didn't have funds to continue to water the Master Association land, we got it addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Jim Fodor?
Yes, there's been quite a bit of improvement, not only with collaboration, but the way the meetings are conducted. And I want to thank everybody involved with that. It's so much better than what it used to be. And we should continue in that regard. But I'll also say this a little bit, elaborating on what Chris said. When you talk to anybody in the organization, they've always been courteous. And that stems from leadership. And when Chris Pachetti left, that's something I wrote as a letter to the editor when thanking him. But you can see it stems from the top down. And that's a tribute to Victoria and Tracy. I want to thank them very much for what they do. So the collaboration, as Chris mentioned earlier, with sharing the water and sharing the pool expenses, that has been outstanding. That should continue. And last thing is the district, they're going to have more money, and I hope they remember that the Master Association helped them out with the irrigation water. So, and that would lower our dues. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jim. Andy Leidens.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to add. I just think it's obviously super important. I think at least in the 3 years I've been on the board, we've had really good communication, and we focus on what's best for the community. And if that means that the MA pays for it, then that's fine. Nobody really has a problem. Doesn't seem like there's the MD versus the MA. Maybe that's been in the past. It doesn't feel like that happens. I think the cooperation between Tracy and Victoria's is definitely where it starts, and that helps because then they can let us know what's going on ahead of time. And it right now we're in a good spot, both financially and from a communication perspective. So that's it.
Thank you, Andy. Dave Seagraves.
I think Victoria added this question because she knows how much we love her. Hey, I can tell you that the MD and the MA boards have never worked better. I've been to meetings for a long, long time, and it starts at the top with Tracy and Victoria, with, like I said, with John Huggins and Scotty Martin. They set the ideas, they set the schedule, they tell us what's important, and we've all bought into how they act toward each other and toward the other boards. So we appreciate all the efforts to put us on the right frame of mind, and it's paid off in a big way.
All right, thank you, Dave. Philip Barley.
I think we found a question that everyone agrees on. The collaboration between the boards is critical and rightly is being given the attention that it should. And from my attendance at the joint study sessions, I've been impressed with how well the executive directors of both the association and the district are working, and the boards as well. So as the services provided by both of the organizations in many cases overlap, I'd certainly like to see further collaboration. And while it's been suggested that there might be efficiencies from combining both groups, the differences in boundaries have always been on that one a sticking point. So perhaps options to dealing with that issue might be explored so that we know what problems must be solved if we were to have more of a formal collaboration.
Great, thank you, Philip. I promise I did not plant that question, so but thank you. Thank
And
you
the
all
answer
for your
is
answers.
no, Victoria, no additional raise or bonus.
All right, so we're moving on to our final question, question number 10. What specific impact have you had on the capital improvements to the neighborhood, such as the pool construction? We'll start with Chris Figge.
Okay, well, if you go back to the survey that we took in 2012, that survey ended up in resulting in a request for money in the form of a bond referendum, which passed back in 2014. And there's an example of something I was very much involved in. And we spent $7.9 million, which was given to us by the taxpayers to improve our 3 campuses. And that's an example. The pool was an MD project, but the MA stepped in and assisted in the completion. And there are probably other areas of collaboration that have occurred. But that's basically, it's almost like a continuation of the previous question we just had. It's 2 boards working together. So really it's not one board of 5 and another board of 5. It's essentially a group of 10 people all pulling the same direction, all rowing the same boat together, and making our community the great place it is.
Thank you, Chris. Jim Fodor.
Yes, as a resident, you don't have much except to attend the meetings and make your recommendations. And when the pool was going up, it was supposed to be finished this year, but because of COVID and so forth, it's delayed a year. And I was really particularly interested in maintaining the aesthetic value of the pool and expressed myself at the meetings that this is actually the jewel in the crown. We really have to have a nice pool, because what do people do? They visit a community, and then they go to the ranch house, and then you have the pool. So fortunately, we will have all those aesthetic features like the sail area, the sail that provides the sun, keeping the sun out, and also nice. I'm sorry.
Shade.
Shade. Yeah, thank you. But anyway, I attended the first meetings because I was concerned about the aesthetics of the neighborhoods, especially the parks. And I think we can use screening to make improvements to the aesthetics of the parks.
Great. Thank you, Jim.
Am I okay?
Yep, you're fine.
Thank you.
Andy Leidens.
Yeah, I think the district managers and you in particular do a really good job of staying on top of all the capital improvements that are needed. We get feedback from the committees. We get feedback from the residents. We'll get even more feedback from the survey, but there's always a lot of discussion around capital improvements, whether it's the security cameras or safety crosswalks or small sections of fences. The cooperation between both boards, as Chris said, is key, and that happens at the joint study sessions. But the capital improvements part of the whole it's kind of an ongoing thing. So,
all right. Thank you, Andy. Dave Seagraves.
Oh, he's gone. I want to talk specifically about the pool because, as Chris Figge said, originally it was an MD project, and I think I was helpful in letting them allow the MA to manage the construction for 2 reasons. One, I have a lot of experience with contracting and project management, and Chris Bassetti, who deserves an awful lot of credit, Victoria would know. She'd shake your head, Victoria. He helped manage the construction project at no fee after he had already retired. So he deserves a lot of kudos in what he did to help the community after he was well retired. So the pool is going to be terrific, and we're going to continue improvements in upcoming years on additional shade, additional facilities for the pool. So it's in our thought process going forward, and we'll make it even better.
Great, thank you, Dave. And Philip Farley.
So with regard to the new ranch house pool, I sought a focus on ensuring that the mistakes made during the community center renovation weren't repeated. And those mistakes involved taking down an entire stand of trees to be replaced with a massive concrete void, and significantly reducing the area for guests within the pool fence, such that capacity has been reduced and there's an inadequate space for loungers at the community center. So at the ranch house, I sought an expansion of the fenced area, keeping as many existing trees as possible, planting new trees and asking for shade to be provided. I also looked at the initially proposed costs for pool furniture and provided the previous manager with other commercial quotes at approximately 1/3 of the fees originally proposed. And as a CPA and Chief Financial Officer, you can be assured that I'll be scrutinizing every expense with that same fine tooth comb.
All right, thank you, Philip. So that is actually all of the questions. I just have a little bit of closing remarks and then we'll finish up. First of all, thank you to all of the candidates for taking your evening to be here and to express your views to the community. This is the first time in several years we've done a forum, and it was suggested by a couple of different residents, and I'm very pleased with how it went. This is definitely the first time we've ever done a candidate forum via Zoom. So that it's a different experience, but maybe one day we'll be able to have one in person. I do want to say, if you have any feedback on how this went, please contact me after the meeting, whether you're a candidate or just a participant on the line, and let us know, because this is a learning experience for all of us since we hadn't done it. So if we want to continue this in future years, I'd love to get some feedback on how we could improve the format and any other suggestions you have. So just to note that the election kicks off tomorrow. You will receive an invitation either via email or via postcard. So the emails will go out in the morning. We have about 75% of the residents with email addresses in our system. And then if we don't have your email address, you'll receive a postcard in the next couple of days. Those were put in the mail at the beginning of this week. So you'll be able to go online. There's a registration code. You'll be able to vote for your household. It is one vote per household, not per registered voter. That is a difference between the Master Association and Metropolitan District elections. So you'll be able to go on to vote. The deadline for voting is March 2nd at 5 p.m. And we will announce the election results later that night. So Dave, you're raising your hand. Do you have a question?
Will the commercial properties get it by mail or by email?
Depends. If we have their email, they get it by email. If we don't, they get a postcard.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions from the candidates before we close down?
Just great job, Victoria and
Great,
Kristen.
thank you.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Great. All right. Well, thank